Hey, Craig.
It's all on you, it's all on me. Can't you see? It's all on you, it's all on me. You and me, can't you? It's all on you, it's all on me.
Hey, Craig. Right or wrong, we don't care. Win or lose, we don't care. We don't care. We don't care. We don't care.
Hey, Jeff. Welcome. We're back.
We are back.
It's honestly like we've consumed so much basketball in the times. Even there was a Wednesday basketball game. It's been so much basketball. So we have so much basketball to talk about. A lot of tournament possibilities to talk about. We have UW to talk about. It's an Apple Cup week. It's a hate week.
Yes.
A Boeing Apple Cup Series week.
Yes.
And the last Boeing, I don't know if they'll still call it, be sponsored like that when it's in the future, and the games aren't as automatic. But yeah, so this is episode 212 of Podcast versus Everyone. I'm Craig Powers. With me, as usual, is Jeff Newser. And
Hello.
Something we want to talk about right off the bat is we always do it at the end, but we've had some changes recently. And if you don't listen all the way to the end, you probably don't know. We have started just a whole website, podcastversuseveryone.com, where the podcast is hosted and where Jeff has been writing a lot of content about the basketball season. There were 2 to 3 posts a week, and really good stuff. A breakdown of each game, and usually a feature outside of that. Really should check it out if you're not a subscriber. Jeff, I think you said we were very close to 400 so far. We'd love to keep. We know there's more of you than that listen to this, so we'd love to pump that up. And yeah, Jeff, anything to add on that? Because it's kind of your baby. You've been running that thing.
Yeah, man. Just, sign up. It's free. For now, we're kind of thinking about different models in the future as far as how we want to handle the subscription service, because we do incur some, expenses to do this, and, it takes some time. So we may do something like that in the future. But for now, totally free to sign up. You go to podcastversuseveryone.com, sign up for the newsletter. It gets anything we write, and also the podcast episodes get delivered to your email inbox, and can't possibly be more convenient than that, right?
Can't possibly. Like, so
Can't possibly.
Sign up, and it's Jeff's content is really good. If you've been following Jeff's basketball writing for a long time, you could tell when he's enjoyed it, and he definitely is. And so
Definitely.
I read it. I read everything, Jeff. I don't know, and sometimes I should, want to do a little editing. I know sometimes you'll get a text from me, but
It does happen, man. Everybody needs an editor.
Yeah, exactly. Even the great Jeff Newser needs an editor.
Especially
but yeah,
Jeff
there's
Newser.
that, and then also I want to, we didn't talk about this before, but we have to share some news that now, 50% of this podcast is a Coug Bug Club member now.
Yeah.
Now that I am officially initiated and maybe still recovering from that initiation.
We would have recorded earlier this week, but someone had to go take like a 24-hour trip to Pullman. So
and someone had to go to Emerald City Comic-Con with his kids too.
That is
blame it all
true.
on me.
That's true. Like, okay, so like I don't know, it was Saturday, I think, or Sunday morning, and I was like, hey man, so when do you want to record this week? And Craig was like, well, Monday and Tuesday are out. And I was like, yeah, okay. Obviously, how about we could do Sunday or we could do Wednesday? And you were like, yeah, Sunday works. I'm like, cool, Sunday works for me. And I took my kids to Comic-Con. First time I've ever experienced the joy of Comic-Con. which isn't really my scene, but my kids loved it. They got all dressed up, did the cosplay thing, and it was a lot of walking, man. It was a lot of walking. Plus, I had my kids with me, so you're just like traipsing around, and most of the time, there's not like places to sit. Like you're just, roaming from thing to thing. And so the way I kind of described it if obviously I think most of our listeners have never been. I'm just going to make an assumption there. Kind of imagine like going to the fair, like just like conceptually, right? So you pay a ticket to get, it's a lot more than the fair, but you pay a ticket to get in. And then once you're in, then there's like some stuff to do. Some of it's free, but a lot of it's not. And then like, you're paying for autographs or selfies with like, famous nerdy people or whatever. And then there's like, a whole showroom floor with people trying to sell you stuff, just, kind of like going to the fair. So, we were really, really pooped by the end of the day. So that's why we didn't do it on Sunday. So I can't blame it all on Craig. So here we are on Wednesday.
Yeah. But yeah, so, the Coug, I did a really short trip to Pullman. I flew out on Monday night, flew back Tuesday morning. And it was a good time. It was nice, I'm glad I did it. The initiation night is fun. It's all Mug Club members, and our friend Patrick was there, so that was nice to know someone for sure.
Yeah,
I definitely latched on to him. Wouldn't leave him alone. But yes, it was all a good time. And then I gotta say, also shout out to Trevor for bringing me a Charlie Sledger Walker bobblehead.
Yes.
So now when I send out my beer picture tonight, it will not just have the Mike Leach head, but also the Charlie's bobblehead.
Well,
so it feels great.
When you send out that picture, you will be the second podcast host of this podcast to send out a picture of your beer with Charlie Sledger Walker in it.
There we go.
Because I already did that. Thanks to Big George. Big George. On Twitter. I don't know if he wants me to reveal his actual name, but Big George on Twitter. Big George 6953. I'm sure there's no significance to that. He got one for me. I'm very thankful. It's so fucking cool. My box is autographed. Very excited. So yeah, Charlize made an appearance in my picture with my Single Hill beer. We'll talk about that later.
We'll talk about beer later. But yeah, so life updates. Yeah, Monday was good. Monday was good because I also crazy won a trip to San Diego to see one of my favorite bands and also get a tattoo by a famous tattoo artist. I don't know. And then I went.
So you are just living the life, dude.
I'm living the life, man. I'm living the life.
Yeah.
2024, good so far.
Club winning contest. By the way, this contest, right? Huge raffle with one of your favorite bands. Dayseeker, right?
Dayseeker, thank you.
And you bought how many raffle tickets for this giant raffle where the winner gets all expense paid trip to San Diego to go to the concert and all this stuff. You bought how many raffle tickets?
One for $20.
And you were the winner.
I was the winner.
That's amazing. That's fucking incredible, dude. That is amazing. You were like, I'll just buy one ticket. It's a good cause, right?
Yeah.
And there you go.
And it worked out. And I'm gonna drag my wife down, and she's gonna go to a metalcore post-hardcore show. And,
hell yeah.
And she's gonna love it. And
beautiful San Diego.
It's good times. Yes, exactly. And I'm gonna get a new tattoo. It's gonna be good.
There we go, dude.
Yeah.
I'm a little jealous. Gotta be honest.
What is this podcast about again? Oh
wait.
Not just
let's talk Cougs.
Another reason why 2024 is amazing is our Wazoo men's basketball team, who just came off a kick-ass weekend sweep of the OG Traders. I've been watching the show The Traders a lot, so I use that word, the Traders.
Yeah.
If you ever want something silly and fun to watch, I highly recommend it. It's fun. It's a silly game show with reality show stars and stuff. But yeah, the USC, man, like this, like that USC is a dangerous team right now because
Yeah.
they were injured earlier the season quite a lot. Andy Enfield doesn't always get the best out of his players, but he brings in high level guys with NBA level talent and NBA level athletic ability. And we saw that with Isaiah Collier. Like he was killing us with he was just a brute force to the basket. We had a hell of a time defending him. And frankly, it really, WSU was having a hell of a time scoring on USC's athletes. And funny enough, something that WSU really hasn't relied on this year much is the 3-pointer, but it really was the 3-pointer, specifically Yaki and Isaiah Watts saving the day. Like if WSU doesn't go bonkers from 3, those two guys, they have no shot to win that game. USC was killing them in so many other ways. But 3s count more than 2s, man.
Yeah. It's, sometimes people have to remember that. It is funny to kind of think that at one point, kind of very early in the season, we were wondering, do we have enough shooters, right? Like we were dominating inside. The big fellas were doing what they have done all year. And we were kind of like, is there enough shooting when the inside game's not working? Are we going to be able to hit enough outside shots? As it turns out, we do have enough shooting. Now, sometimes that can come back to bite you if you're not able to score on the interior at all. I mean, that was the Arizona State game, right? Like we couldn't score inside and also couldn't score outside. And then that was just a disaster. But a couple times this year, Oregon State is one. And then this game against USC is the other, where, the 2-pointers were a little rough and we had a tough time. And look, a lot of credit to USC on that. Like, I'm not sure what people think of when they think of Andy Enfield, but in general, he's fielded, pretty decent defenses. Now a lot of that has had to do with having, sort of premier big men who could protect the rim. Evan Mobley, Isaiah Mobley, right? Those are the two guys that kind of come to mind right off the top of your head. But, it's not just those guys. I mean, he can coach defense and he can get guys to play hard. And USC made things very, very, very difficult in terms of trying to get into the paint and trying to get to the rim and trying to score on the interior like we're used to doing. But, you can't cover all parts of the floor. Nobody can really do that, or very few teams. Maybe Houston can, I don't know, but like very few teams can cover the whole, half the floor. And so, there were some opportunities to hit some threes, and, luckily they had not luckily, I don't know. Luckily is probably not the right word. It wasn't luck, but, fortunately, right. They had some guys, step up to do that. And, we certainly shot more threes in terms of ratio than we normally do. But when you shoot the same percentage on 3s that you do on 2s, and that percentage is 50%, that's pretty good. It's not bad. And as you said, really saved our bacon because we weren't real good in pretty much any other spot. We turned it over a ton, didn't get a ton of offensive rebounds. USC really put up a good fight, and we hit enough 3s, between Isaiah Watts and Yakimovsky to. They had nine of the 10 between them, which is incredible, to carry us to victory in that one.
Incredible, like weird stat that you don't see very often. This both teams had the exact same number of offensive rebounds, exact same number of defensive rebounds, exact same rebounding percentages, which is
I don't know that I've
wild.
ever seen that, to be honest.
Yeah, like because even if you have the exact same number of rebounds, the percentages aren't always the same because of just how the amount of shots that went up could for each team could shake out. Yeah. So it's wild that so basically they put up the same amount of shots with free throws between free throws and 2-pointers and turnovers and whatever. And they ended up with the exact same rebounding percentages and the exact same number of rebounds. Like it's wild.
You know,
So yeah, there was no advantage there.
Yeah. But, you know, we had turned the ball over a ton early in the game and really through the first 10 minutes of the second
nine times
half.
in the first nine times in the first half, I think, and 3 times.
Right. Yeah. It was bad. I think we had 1 turnover in the last 10 minutes. So I think we had 13 in the first 30 minutes, which again is extremely bad. That's how you end up shooting, you know, 50% on threes and 50% on twos and only scoring 1.12 points per possession because
Ernie Kent.
you turn
Ernie
the ball
Kent
over
offense
a
right
ton. Yeah. But once we cleaned up the turnovers, then that's when it really flipped, right? You know, USC kind of threatened to take control a number of times. We came back a number of times. You know, Isaiah Watts had a ton to do with that, you know, hitting timely shots. But once we finally cleaned up the turnovers, Miles Rice had 6, but, you know, again, those, like, I think 5 of those, I think he may have had the 1 turnover. No, he didn't. Cause now I'm thinking about it. The 1 turnover in the final 10 minutes, I think was a shot clock violation. So he had basically 6 turnovers in the first 30 minutes.
If he had the ball last, it could have been on him.
It's possible.
They usually give it to whoever has the ball.
It's possible, but you know, I mean,
or maybe it's team, I don't know.
Yeah, clean it up in the last 10 minutes. That's really what powered them. That and the threes powered them to the win. And then they made some really nice defensive adjustments. I mean, look, you know, Isaiah Collier was murdering us in the first half. I mean, he finished the game with 42% possession usage, which is just an absurd number. And I'm pretty sure in the first half it was more like 50%. Second half, you know, we made some adjustments. I think one of the biggest ones was, you know, we started putting some stronger guys on him. Yakimovsky, Andre got on him quite a bit. And you would think that would be kind of a big mismatch with, you know, Collier's foot speed, but, you know, he really does rely on his strength to a large degree. I mean, he is quick, but like the strength is how he really gets his shots off. And, you know, you put a taller, stronger guy on him and he seemed to have a little more trouble with that. So kudos to Kyle Smith for making those adjustments and just, I mean, they got their shit together in time to, you know, kind of figure it out. And
I don't,
you know,
I don't think Collier might not be like fully fit back yet too. Cause
it's possible.
Enfield took him out.
He only
for
played
some
29
extended
minutes.
Periods. Yeah. Which you think
including
he would have played
the final possession of the game. Like, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah, it's because he was doing defense offense subs with him. He didn't want him to play.
But he could have subbed him in during the free throw.
Yeah, it was
like there were 2 free throws. He could have subbed. And I get that he's not a great 3-point shooter. You know, so you're probably figuring you need. Yeah. You know, you need 3-point shooters, but
they had time to get it too if they wanted to.
I mean, if they had gone really quick, maybe. But the problem is, you know, they had Kobe Johnson in. They left him in, and he's like the worst 3-point shooter, which, as evidenced by him taking the final 3-point shot and it not being close, right? So, I don't know, man. You can always count on Andy Enfield to screw something up in some way, and so, thankfully it worked out to our advantage.
By the way, should you feel bad about letting Isaiah Collier, the Cougs let Isaiah Collier run all over them? He then went and had 31 at UW and finally stole the freshman of the week from the Cougs.
He's really fucking good. He's going to be in the NBA next year. He's really good. Yeah,
like he's really good. He's been very solid since coming back from his injury, probably better than he was before. He's been very good. He's an NBA player for sure. Like we almost got NBA there. Like just out because we honestly we don't have a guy that has the athletic ability that he has. No. And he was on a heater this weekend and we survived it. And but we gotta, there was one guy for Wazoo whose grandfather played in the NBA, and there was one guy whose dad currently plays in the NBA for USC, but it was, and then of course there was one other NBA legacy in there who famously played for Wazoo earlier.
Yeah, we could probably talk about him in a minute.
the NBA legacy that had the best game and won KenPom MVP was Isaiah Watts. Like what a
Yeah.
coming out party for him. Like
Yeah.
just
The thing that I wrote about him was that he is the kind of player that Kyle Smith has somehow had so much success with over the years, right? Like you wouldn't look at him and think, and DJ Rodman, we'll talk about him in a sec, but kind of a similar deal, right? Like not so much the gene lines, that we're talking about, but more like just the attitude, right? This idea of, having a chip on your shoulder, being overlooked. Isaiah Watts, definitely that kind of guy, right? Like who, he comes in and he's just got that thing in him. He's got that, fire in his belly. I don't know how to describe it, but he's a competitor and he's out there to compete. And, he just happened to get super hot with his jump shot. But, at the same time, I mean, I do think that attitude makes a difference. DJ used to be that guy, right? Like, under recruited, he comes in and he's got a point to prove. And, Isaiah Watts, becoming a more, just kind of valuable piece as the season goes on, and also improving his defense. I think that is sort of like one of the big things we have to recognize is, part of the reason why he couldn't play more than 5 or 10 minutes a game was he was just such a liability on defense. And, Mark Sandritter, who, was one of the Cougs Center OGs who, we chat with a lot. He's got this site that he visits that does a lot of like lineup combination plus minus type stuff. And any lineup combination for most of the year that included Miles and Isaiah Watts was horrible. And mostly it was like the defense was a train wreck. Like it was just so bad. It kind of didn't even matter how much those two guys could score when they were on the floor. It just, the defense was so bad. It was an unplayable combination, and which kind of, made a little sense, right? Like Miles isn't, the best defender on the planet. Isaiah Watts was like struggling hugely defensively early in the year. He's made some huge. Miles also, like I don't want to put Miles aside. I think Miles has also become a much better defender as the season has gone along. Isaiah has as well, to the point where in the last couple of weeks we've seen the two of them play together to pretty good effect, which is a really nice development because we've just been so short at guard that it really does give Kyle Smith another option for mixing up personnel to fit whatever the situation calls for in any given moment.
Now it does mean we've ceded the number one spot on average height back to Florida State.
That is true.
Playing,
damn it.
Playing Isaiah Watts more. Damn it. But yeah.
And
yeah,
Oscar Clough
really,
less. That's the big one.
Oscar Clough a lot less.
Oscar a lot less. Maybe we'll come back to that too.
Yeah, we'll come maybe after we talk about UCLA too. But on Rodman, he really looked motivated. He was killing us defensively to start. He was giving Isaac Jones a hell of a time. He even drove in and scored on Isaac once. Kind of bullied him into. He had a solid game. Like it was, it was a very DJ Rodman game. He didn't take a lot of shots.
Very DJ Rodman. Yep.
Grabbed 5 boards. Had a block, had a couple steals. He never has shot much. His one miss was a nice block on a 3-pointer from Isaac Jones. But yeah, he definitely looked motivated and wanted to play well. And I think he did. He was probably, one of the better players for USC. But he lost again.
Yeah.
To you.
He came out of the tunnel. So you saw this, right? He came out of the tunnel, gave the heart hands to the fans.
Yep.
And then got booed. And then he gave him the 4, like I was here for 4 years. And people still booed him. How did you interpret that? Did you see it as he was sort of playing with the crowd, or did you see it as like he was legitimately like, what the hell?
I think he was like, what the hell? Because I think that he wanted to come out. He wanted to say, I still love you. I still love love Wazoo. And after a lot, we talked about the comments last week. Rehash them, but how he left after how he announced and all that, and then you add on the comments. I think
that's the biggest thing, right? Like that's the biggest thing.
But then
to
you
make
added
a big show out of I'm coming back.
But then those comments this week didn't help, and then he obviously just I don't think maybe he was aware that like Coug fans would have.
Yeah, I don't
some
think he
sort
gets
of
it.
ire for him. And like I still, I think on the bow, it's like a positive view of DJ Rodman. He was big for Kyle Smith to build a
Yeah.
culture here, and he's
For
just
sure.
the type of guy, a very wazoo type of
Yeah.
success story. But yeah, like he just, I just don't think he even fathomed that he could have gotten any booze or anything. And he just
That's
didn't,
how it
he
seemed
was
to me.
confused because he just looks so shocked. Because
Yeah.
he came out. To
I
the
just don't
hard
think
hand,
he got it.
Which, by
Like,
the
I don't
way,
think he
like
gets it.
depending on it, he's just doing it. He's doing it to like the alumni side. Like I don't, half of them don't fucking know what you're doing. Like that's such
Yeah.
like a younger thing, like the heart hands thing. It's a very
Yeah.
younger generation's thing. Like, and so they're just like, what is he doing? He's signaling to us. Like I don't know what this is, and like, and you might not be able to see it from farther up, and so yeah, you get some booze, and it happens, dude. You leave a school, after you make a big show about state, like it happens.
Yes.
You just gotta live with it.
Yes.
You know,
I mean,
it hasn't
I
worked
have
out.
fond memories, fond feelings. I wish him well. I also am like, yeah, that was a shitty way to leave. And yeah, for tonight, fuck you. like that's kind of what I was
Yeah,
thinking.
you just
as I
lost
was
again,
kind of watching
just like
it.
you have
Yeah.
so many times this
You
year.
know,
You lost again.
Yeah.
The second time,
Definitely smiling, right? He had that comment back in September of, I was, what did he say? I was tired of losing. And I'm going like, you won so many fucking games the last like 3 years. Like, what are you
You won
talking
more
about?
than most WSU basketball players ever won.
Yeah, like, okay, you
Like-
didn't go to the NCAA tournament. Like, okay, I mean, if that's what you're
But
talking
also
about,
very
then say
few,
that.
very few
right?
Wazoo basketball players have done that. But yeah,
So
That's-
I just was, I don't know, man. Anyway, it just,
That-
I hope he succeeds. I hope he has a great life. I hope whatever. Also was super, like, I was definitely smiling at the idea that he was leaving Pullman unhappy. And I mean, too, both those things can be true, right? You can both be like, yes, I like him and I'm thankful for him and I wish him well and I hope everything's awesome for him. And also, like, I'm glad you're sad. Like, those two things can both coexist.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. Yeah. That's what I said, like on Twitter, I said, on the ballots, I have a positive feeling about him. Like
Yeah.
but that game, it was like, I don't want to fucking lose to this guy.
No.
Like,
Not at
yeah.
all.
And I don't want him
And
to
it
be happy.
actually felt good that we didn't. Like there
Yeah.
was definitely a little bit of like, yeah, it
Oh,
feels good
I
to,
was-
to send him
I
out
was-
of there with a loss.
So I was so goddamn stressed in the first half. Like
Yes.
one, after losing to Arizona State and then we're down like 12 to USC, you're flashing in your brain like, oh my God, we're gonna lose out and miss the tournament.
Yeah.
Like after beating Arizona. Like and like holy shit, this is happening. And I just kind of went on this like rant, like my poor wife. I was like, we're losing, we're gonna lose out, we're gonna miss the damn tournament, we're gonna ruin the season, and we're losing this guy who left us last year, and has been talking shit about us, like, and I'm just like ranting, and then immediately they go on that 8-0 run to end the half and cut the lead down, and suddenly. By the time I was walking over to Beer Star for the second half, that was always the plan. And I had texted Dee ahead. I'm like, I'm going to be grouchy. But I was like, and then she like obviously looks at the score when it had tripped out. She's like, the score doesn't look that bad. And I was like, well, it was worse earlier, right? Like,
It's less bad now. But yeah, we got that kill shot to cancel out their kill shot. And, and then it was a little back and forth. And I mean, we were down by as many as 7 with, under 10 minutes to go. But
by the way, I don't know if we've explained this. A kill shot is a 10-0 run or more.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a guy named Evan Maya that has done some research and found that, teams generally win if they have a 10-0 run in the game, and they generally lose if they allow one. So you kind of have to balance it out.
And it seems intuitive, but also like it's pretty predictive, like strangely so. So
yeah, I shout to Miles, right? So like about 25 minutes of the game, you're just like, this guy just needs to go to the bench and not come back out. Like,
I mean, I tweeted that he was unplayable for a while,
and then he ends the game with 16 points on 6 of 12, 6 turnovers, but 8 assists. and 4 boards. He had some really nice boards. And and he has a positive offensive rating after turning the ball over 5 times in the first, 5 times in the first half. That's
a pretty good comeback.
Pretty good turnaround. Isaac Jones had a rough game, and he did against UCLA too. We could talk about him probably along with Clough in a second here. But yeah, put a bow on this on the USC game. What incredible win, the type of win that just seems to happen in magical seasons like this. They just pull it out of their ass. Type of win that in previous seasons they would have just lost.
Ken Palm luck that we've been talking about, right? Where close games are swinging back our way.
We were owed many over the last 2 years. We were owed many close games to go our way. But yeah, and then so bring on UCLA in the next game, and man, you and I driving up to obviously we were going to the Sounders match later that night. We had to leave. We probably would have planned, if not for my daughter's birthday, to just leave to get up to Flat Stick in time to watch the whole game there. But we had to leave a little late because I had to go to my daughter's birthday party, and we listened to what was it about the first. It wasn't quite the first half, was it? It was maybe the first 12 minutes in the car.
Yeah, something like that.
And they get down 19-6. UCLA scores on their first 8 or 9 possessions, something like that.
Yep, they would not miss.
We get out of the car, get out up to the street, out of the garage. They're down 25.
So we get out of the car. We've lost our signal. That's kind of it. We're okay, I wonder what happens. We get up to the street.
And it's 20. I pull up my phone. I pull up the stream on my phone. And it's 25-15, but Jalen's going to the line. And he hits all 3. It's 25-18. Miles Rice hits a bucket. And by the time we get our beer, literally we're in line. We find a place to sit, watch the game, which had been an unlucky place before, we'll say.
Yep.
We had seen loss there before.
The last time we watched a Coug basketball game there was the women's NCAA tournament last year.
Yeah. So
we got our beer.
But so we were, because we had an escape plan if it was still going wrong. So we got our beer, and literally as Jeff gets his beer, WSU is taking the lead. And it's in the first half, coming back in the first half to take the lead. I think when Jalen gets it and 1. Just an incredible comeback. Now, a big part of it too is getting Adem Bona in foul trouble. Because he was huge for UCLA. We were having a tough time with him. He wasn't Ruben was pretty good on him defensively, but he still he was drawing so much attention, and we were struggling. UCLA obviously was hitting everything to start, and they're not that good of a shooting team. So it's just they have to stop hitting, and they did. But another thing, on the point of Adem Bona being in foul trouble, which is big because Mick Cronin hates to play players with 2 fouls, so he sat the last 10 minutes of the first half.
The most bizarre decision I can imagine. You're an underdog on the road.
Lost a double-digit
this is your best team. Your underdog on the road against the second best team in the conference. He's your best player. And you're I'm going to voluntarily sit my best player for the next, 12 minutes or whatever. Whatever, man. That's to our benefit. So.
Yeah. Well, Kyle does it sometimes too. More
he
than
does, and I disagree with him when he does it too.
Yep. Yeah. I don't. But
they're not. We're not quite the one man. We're not quite the one man show that UCLA is, though, either.
Yeah. So. Yeah. But yeah. Definitely Bona. He was. We had a chance to get NBA'd against him as well, but he didn't play that much. He only played 21 minutes.
21 minutes.
And he actually wasn't that unstoppable. He
had 1 rebound, man.
I know. Well, what did we talk about before? I hope all of our listeners who were watching this game and watching us murder them on the glass,
Yep.
like remembered how we made fun of this team for not having any good rebounders before the game.
Yep.
Like, and sure enough, holy shit. Like
Killed
if
them.
you like the raw numbers, which we don't, but like 39-24, we rebounded 47% of our own misses. That's almost half of our
Yep.
own misses. And it was huge. You know, Ruben
Yeah.
Chinyelu was absolutely and we know he's a really good rebounder on both ends.
Yep.
Absolutely dominating the glass on both ends. Like he played 18 minutes and he had 9 rebounds. 18 minutes,
Yep.
5 offensive rebounds in 18 minutes. And if it
Yep.
was just, you know, him and Watts were the only guys that were having any sort of foul trouble on our team. And but yeah, it was like it was nuts. Like just absolutely nuts. Like to come back, you're down 13 in the first half, and then you end the first half up by 8.
Yeah,
Like
which
because
is incredible.
they had 2 games in a row where they had a crazy run to end the first half.
Yeah, we
And-
scored
and-
27 points in the second quote unquote quarter. Right? So from 10 minutes to 0 minutes in the first half, we scored 27 points.
Yeah, it was 20.
Finished on
Yeah, if it was-
40 in the first half.
Yeah, if it was quarters, 23-13 in the first quarter, 27-9 in the second quarter.
Yep.
And then
Yeah.
UCLA comes out and they kick our ass again.
And they
to-
did it
to-
again.
To start. It was frustrating. But again, you know, Bona's playing. You know, they're hitting some shots again. But really the down the stretch, the WSU took over. Obviously the fouls were a big thing. And I know like UCLA fans go complain. First of all, we've been reffed against y'all so many goddamn times. And
They
so
would
if
never
you think-
recognize that.
If you think you got reffed, I don't give a fuck. Because
Mm-mm.
we get reffed. Also, but at the same time, UCLA is asking for this shit. Like they're playing
Yes.
so aggressively. Like
Yes.
like Bona's was it his 4th or his 5th that when he shoved Isaac Jones at the back and grabbed a rebound.
That was his fourth.
Yeah. That
And then on the fifth one, there was a cutter, and he put his shoulder into him as he was trying to cut, and he got called for
Yeah.
that one. It's like,
and
what are you
and
doing,
there
my
was
man?
it's just like the refs probably they ignored several other fouls, but you
Oh,
got to
for
call, especially like when you're creating massive advantages with the fouls. Yeah,
Yes.
like you can't just run through a guy and push him out of the way and grab a rebound. Like that's just not how it works. Like
Yeah, UCLA was definitely employing we are going to foul constantly and dare them to make a call. Dare them to call them all. And Pac-12 refs were like, challenge accepted. Like,
sure.
like they called, so, you know, and look, I mean, like you said, like there have been plenty of times where those don't get called. And I think what was most stunning to me was just, you know, typically the less talented team is the one that resorts to those kinds of tactics. And I think you look at those teams and you go, yeah, the less talented team resorted to those tactics. Like, you know, you watched UCLA and you just thought like, man, they are just, they got one dude and that's Bona. But you know, it's always a little risky to have your one dude be a post player, right? Because they rely so much on the ball getting to them. They rely, you know, typically they got to get, they are in position to get in foul trouble more than anybody else. You know, and so when we sort of put the different factors together for, you know, a front court player being your stud, it can be really, really tough and can be a little dicey because those guys can get taken out of a game for, you know, either with foul trouble or if the guards have a hard time getting the ball to them in spots where they can, you know, do damage. And then you look at kind of the rest of UCLA's roster and there are like some really, you know, nice players in there. Like if you're telling me, okay, if WSU could have Stefanovic or Andrews or Mack, right? If you're telling me, yeah, would you like those guys or Williams? Would you like one of those guys? I'd be like, hell yeah. I'd love one of those guys. But none of those guys are a stud. None of those guys are like, maybe Mack turns into that guy. I mean, he's only a freshman. Williams only a freshman. I mean, maybe that's kind of part of the deal is, these guys are just real young. But it's also like, none of them at this moment are, real difference makers. And then you go to Wazoo and you got, Wells and Rice and Jones. And, Isaac Jones didn't have a great game, but he scored 11 on
if he shoots
5 field goal attempts, because he went to the line.
If he shoots his normal free throw percentage, he's got 13.
Yeah. He's got a couple more points. And, so between Isaac and Miles and Jalen, I mean, you've got 3 players who are, as good or better than anything UCLA's got. And that's kind of a crazy thing to think about, but it's the truth. And so UCLA was like, we're going to, and to be honest, they had lost to Washington and they played, horribly on defense, particularly in that game. So Mick Cronin being the, the little, fascist that he is, challenging their manhood and be physical. And so of course they come out and we got elbows flying into lips in the first 3 minutes of the game to the point where we got guys bleeding. And it's like, okay, if that's what you got to do to try and compete, but you're freaking UCLA. You're not supposed to have to do that. You're not supposed to have to complain about referees after the game. Like, man, if that's where your program's at, you have fucked up. You're whining about a ref job at Washington fucking State. Like, come on, man. So, yeah, I think it says a lot about our team, the way that game went down, the way the game was played. The more talented team won, which is, like I said, kind of insane to think about, but I think that's true. Again, got, good contribution from Isaiah Watts. Again, only scored 6 points, but, playing 15 minutes, 12% of possessions, hit 2 threes, with 2 defensive rebounds and an assist, no turnovers and a steal. Like now he did have 5 personal fouls, but some of those were questionable.
So I think Isaac was the primary recipient of when the refs needed to even up, felt like they needed to even up a foul
Isaiah, you mean?
Count. Isaiah was. Yeah. Did I say what I say?
Yeah. You said Isaac, but Isaiah.
Isaiah was. Isaiah was definitely the primary recipient of those. He definitely fouled. Like he was being a little overzealous a few times, but he's just. I love his work rate, man. Like he works his ass off. Like he knows. Does. Like you know what? I might only see 10 minutes today. I'm gonna run my ass off the whole time.
And he got caught in a bad switch a couple times too. That was a couple of the fouls. But he battled.
Like he basically just had to foul a big to avoid a layup. Which that happens, but it was. But then of course, Miles came back, much better game, much more control, reduces turnovers to 3. Was much better at getting to the rim. UCLA really couldn't guard him on the perimeter. He was getting to the rim much easier than he has.
The 2-man game on ball screens was awesome. Like he was just so good at like kind of working that and then splitting defenders or turning the corner. Like he was very good.
Yeah, and then of course Jalen, get to the line a bunch, making all 10 of his free throws, just hitting big shots. Yeah, like it was just, 27 points again. Like he's just turned into such a scorer. It's such it's so impressive. Like just to have this option now. Like, we're sorry, I knocked over my mic. I'm sorry, wait, because I talk with my hands. Well, actually, I was gonna go click on something, but yeah, like he had, he's just become such a guy. He's probably our second most important player at this point on offense, at least.
Yeah.
And he's really stepped it up. He's had 27 points twice in the last 4 games. Like that's wild.
Yeah.
And,
I mean,
and, you know,
he's
he was, yeah.
in conference play. You're probably looking at this too, but like
Yeah.
in conference play, he's playing 83% of the minutes. Okay. So
That's a lot.
that's a lot, right? His usage is not super high. It's 18%, which is, kind of a contributor type thing. But his offensive rating with the 18% usage is 132.6. And for people, it's so like for people who are not like into these stats, these tempo free efficiency stats the same way we are, I understand that they can be sort of like a little esoteric, right? Like that, like what does that even mean? Okay, so an average offensive rating right now would probably be what, like about 104, something
Yeah.
like that, right? Because
Yeah.
it basically represents the number of points that you produce per 100 possessions. So right now, I think the average in Division I basketball is something like 1.04 points per possession. A 132.6 offensive rating roughly translates to like 1.
It's actually 1.07 right now.
1.07.
Wow.
Okay. So an average offensive rating would be like 107. So for Jalen Wells to be at 132.6 means that he's roughly responsible. Every time he uses a possession, he's roughly responsible for 1.33 points per possession, which is absolutely insane. Now, some of that is due to the sort of lowish possession percentage, right? Like, so as that goes up, efficiency tends to come down.
But here's the
because
thing.
you're just taking more difficult shots. But it's crazy.
But here's the thing about his possession. With the rest of his profile, you would expect him to have a higher turnover rate. With the amount of free throws
Yes.
he takes, with the amount of 2-pointers he shoots, you would expect him to have a free throw, even a good person who takes care of the ball, a turnover rate north of 10, like a 12 or
Yes.
something. His turnover rate is so astronomically low, 5.8% in conference play, the best rate in the
any
Pac-12
player.
in conference play.
Any
of
player in the Pac-12.
17th best nationally for the whole year, by the way. And this, not everyone qualifies. You have to use a certain number of possessions to actually qualify for this. To actually qualify to be ranked. His ability to take care of the basketball is crazy. Like because he does put it on the deck a lot.
Yeah.
And he doesn't turn it over that much.
It's not just
he's
catch
very
and shoot.
He doesn't get a lot of assists, so he's not like trying a lot of like difficult passes, but he is creating, and especially in the last 10 games, he's really become a creator, someone who breaks down defenders off the dribble. And he's done that a lot more in conference play against better competition, and his turnover rate has went down. Like, that is such a huge part of his efficiency, and it's part of the reason why his usage is so low.
Yeah.
Is
if he was at
another guy
something more normal, like 15%, right? Like 15% turnover rate would be much more normal for someone who does what he does. Like, what would his possession percentage be? Like 22, 23, something like that, right?
Which would just,
Which would make him
be a normal like guy that with his production, that would be a guy that you would expect him to be about 23% around there.
Right. And that would be the same roughly as, say, Isaac Jones, right? Like that's in that ballpark of that kind of guy. So yeah, it is remarkable what he is doing, what he has done. I for people who subscribe to the newsletter, I have a post that I'm working on Jalen Wells. It'll come out probably next week, in advance of the Pac-12 tournament. But just looking at looking at Jalen Wells and thinking about like him and as compared to the other Division II up transfers, spoiler alert, he's the best one. Not that you'd be, shocked to find that out, but what he has done compared to the other people who have up transferred from Division II truly is like insane. Like I don't know a better word. Like it is so crazy. It is so unusual to do what he is doing. And it is such a key part of what this team is accomplishing that it like, I know that like a lot of I'm trying to think of a nice way to say this. Like a lot of the oxygen when we think about like the team and the attention it gets on the national stage, a lot of the oxygen is taken up by Miles Rice, as you would expect, as is, totally justified, right? With Miles coming back from cancer. That it doesn't leave a lot of room for maybe some of these other storylines where it's like fucking Jalen Wells, like that is the most insane story that a kid jumps up from Division II to the Pac-12 and truly is one of the best players in the conference. It's like, it's crazy. It's crazy pants.
It's wild. And it's just, this team is full of stories like that, like
Yep.
It's wild, Miles and Isaac and Isaiah Watts, even, taking a prep year, and
Yep.
and Jalen and Oscar coming from JC, freaking Andre from North Macedonia. Like it's just up and down. Ruben, who wants to be a doctor and fucking save lives in his home country. Like there's just so many people that are so easy to root for on this team. Like it's so great with great stories. Very, very Wazoo, extremely Wazoo, like up and down the roster, like stories. Like it's such a great team to root for. And Jalen is a big part of that. Just, guy who has really had to prove himself, and he has fully proved himself this year as like a great player. Like it really, this is beyond any expectation we could have had for him. And so is Miles.
Oh yeah.
Miles has been that way. Miles is another player that's just been beyond any expectation we had for him. But Jalen, it's like he's coming from D2, and you're just like, yeah, maybe he'll hit some threes. I don't know, but just what he's just been able to do beyond. I mean, his 3-point percentage is insane. Like he's shooting 47% on threes in Pac-12 play. Like, and he doesn't just shoot easy spot up threes.
No,
like
he doesn't.
He hits dribble pull up threes. He hits 28-footers. Like it's crazy. And he hits big shots in tense moments. Like,
I mean, 120.
incredible.
He's got 128 threes overall, and 91 in conference play. Like he's shooting a lot of threes. Like the only reason his overall number isn't bigger is because of the injury at the beginning of the year. He didn't play the first game, really didn't play the next 2 games either. I mean, he played barely. And then also it took him a little while to kind of settle in. But man, God, once he settled in, dude's been unreal. He has scored double digits in every game since December 31st.
He was one of his first 8 threes at Wazoo.
Yeah. Which is crazy. On his threes, he went 0 for 1, 0 for 2, 1 for 5. So the first 3 games he got back. And then he went 4 for 6 against Utah Tech. You're like, all right. And then he went 0 for 3, 0 for 1. Right. So, in 5 of his first 6 games, he was 1 for 10, 12, something like that. I can't do the math in my head right now, but
it was like one game against a really bad team where he dropped a bunch of shots.
Yeah. And the last game he didn't score in double digits was against Colorado on December 31st. And that game we talked about, that game was really bad. And we were like, I don't know, man, he had a good game against Utah.
Don't know if he can handle this.
And then since then, not only has he not been in, not been,
he also only played 15 minutes in that game.
Yes. So not only is he not been in double digits, he also has only had 1 game where his offensive rating was under 106.
He has, so he was,
2 games.
He only had 8 against Arizona State.
Oh, he did. Oh, my bad. I was looking at the wrong column. Yeah, so
we don't think about that game. That game doesn't count.
Yeah, that game didn't actually happen. So
yeah,
I'm okay with that.
Okay, we've now officially talked about the game as much as we did last week, right after the game happened. So,
God damn it.
But yeah, otherwise he's just, I mean, everyone sucked that day. But he's just been crazy good.
Yeah.
Let's talk a bit about the bigs though. Isaac had a bit of a rough weekend. Teams are really trying to force the ball out of his hands. And then Clough played, I think he only played 8 minutes against UCLA. Chinyelu started both the games. Didn't even take a shot against UCLA.
Yep.
And then only took 2 shots against USC, only played 9 minutes. Only 12 against Arizona, against 12 against Arizona State. So I know there's been some flu going around, but that hasn't stopped like Isaac, who reportedly had it, from playing a bunch. So I'm
And
not going to
looked
blame
like
it on that. Yeah, definitely Isaac. I think I'm gonna excuse some of how Isaac's been playing just for recovering from illness, which sucks. And
Yep.
Kamani too. Kamani's been struggling with that too. But Oscar, it's weird. He went from being just such an essential player for so many games, especially defensively, to Ruben has completely and it hasn't just been Ruben, it's been Watts too, has taken his minutes.
Yes.
'Cause
That's
we've went
been the
smaller.
big key, is that Watts has been playable.
Yeah, it's wild. But I don't think I think there's still a chance we see him play more, especially if we get a few, if in the NCAA tournament where teams
Yes, I do too.
haven't seen us play, it's not teams we've already played against, and like teams who just know us and have talked to the other coaches in the Pac-12 and said, "Oh, you gotta stop for doing this, stop for doing that." I think we have a chance, especially if we play, if we're a 5 or 6 and we're playing a mid-major, and maybe Clough's size could really be an asset. And
Yeah.
but yeah, it's interesting to see that he has just fallen off, and even when he's played, he's not, the last 2 games especially, he's not really much of a factor offensively.
Yeah.
Which he is. For a while, he was just he was never a huge usage guy, but he would get up, he would get offensive rebounds, and he'd probably get a couple hook shots in per game. But they've really just not played him. And that's weird.
Yeah.
But you and I talked about this the other day when we were, it's when you think about past seasons, past NCAA tournament teams at Wazoo. Obviously, I'm thinking about the Bennett teams. I think about the 06-07 team, which is very similar to this team in so many ways. In terms of how the season's gone, the quality of the conference, how many wins they're all that stuff. But if you remember, Matt Hobson was the starting point guard to start that season. Ivory Clark was the primary 5. A really a 6'7" guy who played way above his height, but he was the primary 5. He started a lot, and if he didn't start, he usually played more than Baines. But by the end of the season, Baines was the starting 5, and then Taylor Rochester was the starting 1. And so this shit happens over seasons, especially when you guys have guys that, Baines in that season, he was coming off an injury. Taylor was coming off an injury. Or you have young guys like Watts that just kind of figure it out as they go along and they start playing better. It happens, it's wild. Like you think back, by the end of the season that year, Chris Matthews wasn't playing at all, really. But if you go back and look at the highlights for when WSU beat Arizona in January, Chris Matthews was playing in overtime. Like he was on the court in overtime. Shit changes throughout the season. So, but the good thing is you still have that player, and if they still have that skill set, and Clough is a guy that definitely has a very specific, important, and good skill set that he may be valuable in a future game. He may be valuable against UW on Thursday. Who knows?
Yeah.
So he may be he was last time. So he may be valuable again. And it's just made your roster longer that Isaiah Watts has become useful. Chinyelu's become better. Like, there's nothing bad about this. I mean, it sucks for Oscar to have to play as much, but it could have been matchup issues, and it's nice that you can make. Kyle does such a good job of adjusting his lineup in the middle of games, and this is part of it. He's just adjusted on the fly.
Yeah, and he's got different pieces to play with, right? I mean, so you mentioned the emergence of Isaiah Watts, which has been great, giving you just another look where you can actually play, two guards together, which is, how this team
Weird.
was
What is that?
built to play. I know, right? Built to play at the beginning of the season. And then you've got the flexibility of, Chinyelu is a very different player than Oscar, right? So, you get to play someone who, maybe does some different things. And, if you don't necessarily need what Clef brings, you've got, some different pieces you can play. You can get Chinyelu in there. Now, Clef's has developed into a pretty decent rim protector. I mean, he had a stretch there of, 3 or 4 games where across 4 games, he totaled 9 blocks. I mean, that's pretty good, right? That's like 2+ blocks a game. That's really great. But then, of course, last 4 games, now we have 1 block. Some of it has to do with, in the last 4 games, he's played 8 minutes, 9 minutes, 12 minutes, 12 minutes. But also at the same time, like, there's just been a little bit of a lack of effectiveness. And part of that is too, I mean, he, for whatever reason, has struggled a little bit to finish around the rim. In his last 4 games, he's 3 of 10 on twos, which is, you really kind of need double that from him. You need like 6 of 10 on those twos. And, you mentioned the offensive rebounding. I mean, again, 3 offensive rebounds in the last 4 games. Like, he's just kind of struggling. And, maybe he is sick. Maybe that's the explanation. Maybe it's just, matchups or whatever. But for whatever reason, he's taken a step back, but the team hasn't, because, Chinyelu's gotten better. And like you said, you've gotten some, lineup flexibility with some other guys. So yeah, it's very interesting seeing kind of the ebb and flow of a season where, a guy is, so important. You're like, man, this guy's maybe like kind of the hidden MVP of the team, to where like now he can barely get off the bench. So it is pretty funny. I'm not sure how, against Washington, he'd be the play, unless Washington decides to go, pretty big.
Well, he played 32 minutes against them last time.
He did. But, I think with just kind of the way the rotation's gone at this point, with, Chinyelu and him being a rim protector, and with, some of the things that Washington likes to do to try and get into the lane, but it could be a sort of thing where it's like, hey, this is what he did last time, and, we're gonna go to him again. I mean, he was, like you said, he played 32 minutes with an overtime game. Scored 12 points. He was 6 of 9 on twos, 8 off.
He had like 10 points
rebounds,
in a
3
row
of
at
them
one
offensive.
point.
Yeah, like he was kind of the catalyst at one point. Like, maybe this is the game, where he gets right, because Washington really isn't great, on the interior at all, and maybe he can abuse those guys.
For his sake, I hope so, because his dad has been at the game since Arizona. He's been to going to every game, and this has been his, he's been barely playing compared to what he was playing before. So his dad flying out from Australia, leaving the Sunshine Coast when it's their summer. Although they leave because it's so goddamn hot there in the summer. But yeah. So I love this. We're nerding out. We are an hour in. We have only talked about 2 basketball games. This is like you give us the men's hoop team is good, and we just can't fucking stop. We gotta talk about this UW game. We talked about it a little bit, but obviously UW coming in. It's gonna be a big crowd again. A big, and then it doesn't, like, the students will get excited against UW. Like, they're gonna go nuts. UW is one of those teams that can be a lot better than their record at times, because they do have some players. Obviously, Keon Brooks was big last time against us. and Severe Wheeler is pretty inconsistent, but he could go through stretches where he kills teams. But yeah, they've really haven't beaten anyone in the top 100 on KenPom since beating Utah at home on that weekend that we also destroyed Utah at home. But that's their only win over a top 100 team since beating Gonzaga at home in December.
So in conference play,
so
they've beaten one decent team.
And it was at home.
Yes.
Their best road win is over Arizona State. Or sorry, Cal. Well, some and that was like a game-winning shot at the buzzer.
Yes.
So they haven't. So I definitely think if you look at home road, they're not played as well on the road, and WSU has definitely been playing better at home overall. So I like that. I like that factor. But UW is a solid team with solid players that definitely gave us trouble at times, like last game. So Keon Brooks is a guy that could give us trouble. It'd be a guy that's tough to defend at times. But I also think he probably can't have much better of a game than he had against us last time.
That is accurate. That would be tough to do.
Yeah, like he had one of his best games of the year against Wazoo last time. And like one of his I think it was his highest usage of the year. Yeah, it was. He was 42%, 35 points. He was killer. He was a stone cold killer. He actually probably played some of his better defense on us too. But he's on the road now. He's not going to be not going to have that. Well, he was kind of a little bit on the road in that game.
It's true.
There was a lot of Coug fans there. And there will be even more in Pullman. But yeah, he's a good player. Definitely somebody, in the back of your mind, like if we lose, it's probably because he goes for 40 or something.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
But
I don't know if that's. Yeah,
he's not going to. And there's one reason why. Jim Shaw.
So that game against Wazoo, for Wazoo, that game was. Let's look at the points per possession.
It was insane.
Like that was February 3rd. They gave up 121.6.
Yeah.
1.2.
Yep.
Over 1.2 points per possession.
Which is bad.
That is
very bad.
Easily WSU's worst defensive performance since that Oregon game when Oregon would miss. And that's their second worst of the year.
Yep.
And they've only really even come close to that in that Arizona State game, which we can excuse for so many reasons. Now WSU just came off not a particularly good defensive weekend, say that. Against UW, they're definitely going to need to limit their turnovers because UW wants to push the ball, and you don't want to give them easy buckets because if you get them in the half court, you can have a lot more success. Now, the good thing is UW doesn't really force that many turnovers, so it'll be a lot easier than against teams against USC and UCLA who defenses are built on forcing turnovers. So if they can come out and have that focus again, that'll be a big part, not just in their offensive efficiency, but in their defense too. Because UW's defense is not that great. So just hold on to the damn ball, and you're probably going to find a good shot.
UW's defense is ranked 9th in conference play in points per possession. It's quite bad.
And while UW's is second, or sorry, WSU's is second, and WSU is also second on offense. So they're second on both to Arizona, of course, which is really impressive. Like to be second on both of those in league play, that's really impressive. Like to have that sort of balance, WSU just hasn't in a long time had that sort of balance of good offense and good defense.
Yeah.
So that's why they've been able to win so many games. They've been able to win when their defense has been shit. They've been able to win when their offense has been shit because, one might make up for the other. So I don't expect a lot of threes to be shot this game because WSU is going to limit UW's, even though they like to shoot quite a few, a little bit over average. And then, but UW also limits threes, and we don't really shoot that many to begin with. I think I'd love to see us kill them on the defensive glass or on offense for us, and then kill them on the defensive glass as well. Like I expect us to control the glass of this game. It's so, and get to the line. UW fouls a lot. There's just some things, and this is all played into like. Hopefully, we get the inside game going against UW again. Hopefully Isaac could get back to it and see him have a nice game again, like he did last time they played. And obviously Oscar did too.
Yeah, with Isaac, what I'd like to see is this. You mentioned that teams are really coming hard at him when the ball gets in his hands. So to me, it seems like the biggest challenge with him is that he's simply got to be a little more decisive. Like
Yes.
He's not doing a bad job. Like it's not like when he gets doubled or when teams are, throwing bodies at him that he's, all of a sudden he's panicking and turning the ball over or whatever. But also once teams do that, like whatever offensive advantage might have been created is gone because he's taking a little bit too long to, pass the ball back out of the post to somebody. And usually what happens is he gets the ball down in the post. He takes a second to sort of survey the landscape, which again, pretty normal, but all of a sudden, okay, here comes a double. And he is kind of like, okay, well now what do I do? And so he takes that little like dribble, toward the sideline, toward the 3-point line to create a little space, throws the ball back out. And it's like, okay, but that throwing the ball back out's not creating an advantage. It's just sort of like, okay, now we're resetting. And
now there's 10 seconds on the shot clock.
Right. And now there's 10 seconds on the shot clock. Right. And so what really needs to happen with him is, when he's got to know what he's doing when he catches the ball, right? Like, so he's got to start working. And I think he did a little better job of this kind of as the weekend went on, but he's just kind of got to have a better sense of like, okay, when I catch the ball, this is going to happen. So I'm going to do this to create an advantage. And maybe it's, I'm going to catch the ball and before the double team can come, I'm going to go to work right away. Like I'm not even going to survey the landscape. I'm going to turn away from the double team and go right to the rim. Right. Because the other thing is once he sort of hangs onto the ball and surveys everything, even if the double team doesn't come super fast and hard, what he's finding is, okay, teams are sometimes not doing that. But when he starts going to work in the post, now all of a sudden they're digging down and stripping the ball, which he has had a pretty significant problem with over the last few games. So I'm sure they've worked a ton with him over the last, few days, trying to, showing film and figuring out what to do when the ball gets down there. And the one thing that Isaac has, consistently impressed me with this year is that every time somebody throws something new at him, he adapts. And he has just like shown a tremendously high basketball IQ for a guy who, supposedly didn't play a ton of basketball and didn't really get serious about it until college, until he went to Wenatchee Valley, right? Like he has a really high IQ and the ability to adapt and grow and mold his game to new challenges. And so I'm hopeful that that's going to be the same case there because we really do need him. I mean, we've seen that, right? Like he is such a difference maker for our team. When he's right, it makes just such a massive difference to have that bucket in the post.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it'll be big against UW. WSU's real advantage is their interior play, both on defense and offense. And so we'd like to see the bigs have
Washington's
have a
front
nice
court
game
is
here.
bad.
Yeah.
It's bad.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be anchored by Kepnong. He's been hurt just like he was at Oregon. So, they've really missed him and, it's not good. Their interior is bad, and we should take advantage of it repeatedly.
Yes. So yeah, Ken Palm has a WSU average win by 6. I'd love to see any win, but I'd love to see them beat the shit out of UW.
Yes.
Now
Let's do that.
Now, Jeff, briefly, like you wrote a post about this, but beating UW, not losing to UW may impact your seeding a bit. Beating UW probably not going to add much. And as you said, I think because of the weakness of the conference overall, they're outside of beating Arizona again in the Pac-12 tournament. There isn't a lot that WSU can kind of do to raise its stature. And it seems like their ceiling right now, if they win out, maybe a 4.
Yeah.
And potentially if they win out and then lose to Arizona, maybe a 5. So then you're maybe in Spokane.
If you win out, you're talking about very likely beating Arizona again. Maybe not, but probably.
Probably.
You're the second place regular season team and the conference tournament champ. Like I have a really hard time thinking that the committee. Now I know the committee will say things like,
we could still win the title. If we beat UW and then
it's true.
Go USC or UCLA this weekend.
Yep. Arizona could lose
it's
one of those 2 games.
It's down
on
to
the road. Yep. But let's assume they don't. You're okay. Second place regular season team. Which is a fair assumption. Conference tournament champ. Like I know that the committee is not supposed to think things like, oh man, a team from the Pac-12, blah blah blah. But it is really hard to imagine a team from the Pac-12 in that situation being not a top 4 seed. Like that's just kind of a really that's a tough scenario to imagine. Now, maybe it could happen, but I would say even if we do that and we don't beat Arizona a second time, that we probably end up in that 4 range, just again, because you're a power conference team. You just won the tournament. You're the second place team. Like, I think that's the thing. I think we are going to land in the 6 or 5 range. I mean, maybe if we lost, God forbid, to Washington and then bounced out in our quarterfinal game to finish with 2 losses to end the year, maybe that drops us down like to a 7 seed or something like that. But I think we're going to be in that 5-6 range for the most part, which is great because that is kind of where you need to be to probably end up in Spokane. I know that there's been a lot of talk about whether they would end up in Spokane, but it's at 5 or 6, it's probably pretty likely, that the committee does try to put teams regardless of seed, especially if they're like a single digit seed, basically, does like to try to put them close to their campus if they can, right? Sometimes they can't because of all their whatever bracketing rules and whatever, but they do try to put people there if they can. And it's really going to work out to WCU's advantage that there's just not a lot of strong teams out West. Like it's basically, it's Arizona, it's us, it's San Diego State, it's Gonzaga, it's St. Mary's. That's just not very many teams, right? There's not very
Gonzaga,
many teams. So.
Gonzaga, maybe Gonzaga, they're currently probably seated around a 7 or 8.
Yeah, on bracket matrix, they're at a 7. Yeah.
Maybe they get up to a 6 if they beat St. Mary's again. I don't know. It's neutral
but we could
site,
both end up in Spokane without playing each other because we could be in different pods in different regions up there. So, there's a chance we both end up in Spokane and don't play each other. So,
if we both end up in Spokane, that is going to be the most expensive fucking tournament ticket you will ever see in your entire life.
No kidding. That would be
especially if both make it to the
insane.
second round and they're both playing in the same session.
Yeah,
the second round.
Well, and part of that is the arena's not that big, right? Like if it was in Portland or something, like Portland, I think it was like 20,000 or 22,000 or something for basketball. Like it's a pretty big arena. Like to be Spokane's what? Like what does that top out at? Like 15,000, 16,000, something like that? I
Like
don't know. It's not
Wikipedia
that
says
big.
12 to 14,000.
Okay, so maybe
But
like
I think they
14,000.
could. I think they might expand it. Like NCAA tournament games, they might be
Can't
able
be
to
that
find
much.
some. Yeah,
Yeah.
and then
So anyway,
like
the idea is that it's significantly less than a lot of other
Moda Center
large
is
arenas.
20,000.
Yeah. So anyway, I mean, I think that, status quo, I think that we really do have a pretty decent chance of ending up in Spokane, which would be, unbelievably cool. So
Yeah, that would be cool. That'd be a great thing for a lot of Cougs. I've already said I'm going. I don't care whatever coin I have to drop. I'm going to wherever they are. I've
I
already
love that.
discussed it with my wife. That I'm gonna be gone those days, and it could be in fucking North Carolina. I don't care. I kind of hope
Yep.
it. You obviously second choice. It's not Salt Lake. It's Brooklyn. That'd be sick. That'd be so fun.
That would be fun.
We'd have a
That
blast
would
out
be
there.
fun. Yep.
Also, probably an area where actually there's a decent amount of Cougs, like on that East Coast, like between Boston down to like Maryland, over to Philly, between there and Philly and New York. Like there's gonna be a lot of Cougs that just kind of are around there that will you just from people who could take trains, like Amtrak's to the game could actually put a pretty good presence compared to like Omaha or something like that. So that would be cool. And also it's a hell of a lot easier to fly to New York than anywhere in between. Like there's so many flights.
It's true.
But yeah, but also I think just the in Brooklyn, playing at that fancy arena, and then also just bars are open till whatever the fuck they want. I mean, technically it's 4, but I swear to God, in New York, it doesn't really matter. The Cougs can have a lot of fun. But yeah, anyways, Spokane would be the ideal though. But anyways, Jeff, we've done now an hour and 20 minutes on men's basketball. Well, there was some stuff about the Mug Club and winning contests in there, but let's talk about beer we're drinking. Jeff, what are you drinking right now?
Dude, this can be so fast. I stopped by Rainier Growlers, picked up the Single Hill Snow Cone, which is the frozen fresh hop IPA, flash frozen citra hops. I was, curious what it was going to taste like, curious how it was going to be. And I'm going to be honest, my palate's not refined enough to really detect any real difference, but it was delicious.
Very
there
good.
You go.
Single Hill.
I've now moved on to my Freem Pilsner.
Unless my wife or father-in-law this weekend drank it, I think I have one of those in the fridge. I am drinking from Wayfinder, one of my favorite breweries. I think one of yours as well.
It's a great brewery.
The Unaltered State West Coast Pilsner, because the state of our NCAA tournament seeding was unaltered by winning twice this weekend.
I love that. Hell yeah.
But this is a West Coast Pilsner. It's kind of a new style. Basically, it is a Pilsner that is hopped a lot like a West Coast IPA. Not quite the level of bitterness, but a lot of hops in it. I think it's like a cousin to the India Pale Lager. Very tasty. This one's made with Mandarita, Bavaria, Mosaic, Crosby, Strata, CGX, Amarillo hops. It's very good. I highly recommend this beer. I mean, because if it's a Pilsner, Wayfinder absolutely crushes it. And then the hopping on this is just wonderful. It drinks like an IPA, but with at 4.9%, like a little bit lighter body, a little crisper finish. I love it. I love this style, and you really can't find many better versions of it than this Wayfinder Unaltered State version. So yeah, check it out. I love it. And honestly, this is one of the coolest styles that has come out recently.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah, yes. West Coast Pilsners, baby. But yeah. So anyways, Jeff, let's talk about the women's team briefly. Huge win over Colorado on Sunday. That honestly, at the time, I think put them in the tournament. Like all the like if you looked this morning at the various handful of women's bracketologists, that they were in as like like one of the last 4 or whatever, 10, 11 seed. But man, their game today against Cal could not have gone any worse.
Extremely bad.
That was rough. That was
Yes.
in the last 4 years of this team being good. Like that was one of the worst, especially in a big situation. Just one of the worst like performances I've seen them come through. They struggled to score, and then they struggled to rebound on the defensive end, and then Cal started hitting threes in the second half, and they had already built a lead on the inside before that. But they started hitting those threes in the second half, and it was over.
Yeah, I don't know how Cal did not win more games. Like, maybe it's just that they are a really bad matchup for us. And I do think there's definitely something to that. Like, Cal is just they're very strong, very physical.
Yep.
And that is not something that we are in general. Right. And so, Cal definitely leans into that super hard. And if you don't punch back, then, and you see this with referees all the time, right? Like where one team is being the aggressor, they're being more physical, and the other team does not sort of rise to match that. And then you're not getting the calls, right? You're not, even though the other team is clearly fouling you, clearly not doing things within the boundaries of the rules, you're not getting the calls because you're not elevated to that level of intensity. And, it's kind of what happened today. I was super disappointed with I won't say effort, because like, I don't think effort, although there were a couple times where I felt like the effort wasn't there. But just in general, it was just more like they just did not rise to Cal's intensity. And I watched 2 of the 3 games against Cal this year. So the first one and then this one. And both times in the games that I watched, like Cal was like, man, we are going to punch you in the mouth and do it in a way that, is, not the way UCLA did on Saturday, but like in a way that's like, we're just going to be super duper physical, and we are going to push you around, and we are going to crash the offensive glass, and we are just going to be bullies. And it's are you going to stand up to us? Are you going to, do something about it? And they didn't. And, the Cougs just did not. And it was a very, very frustrating game to watch, because you could just see that they did not meet Cal's level.
I will say in the second half, Jess played a lot more, and she's definitely their strongest big.
Yep. And that made a bit of a difference.
Because however you say her name, Onya, she didn't do a lot in the second half. But Cal started hitting those threes. There was one girl that hit 5 threes. McIntosh. She hit 5 threes. That buried us. Like anytime WSU would have a couple buckets, which was rare because they didn't score much. So WSU went on a little stretch where they were able to pull within 13 with 6 minutes left. And you're like, okay, if they get a couple more buckets here, it's like not out of the question. They could have a miracle comeback or whatever. Because they had pulled it down from 20, but then Cal just hits a 3 and it's 16 again.
Yep.
And then WSU ended up scoring in the last 6 minutes, scored 5 points. And 2 of those were free throws with like 30 seconds left.
Yes. It was bad.
So they went
the
on a stretch of
announcer was trying to convince everybody that WSU was still in the game. This game is not over, not by a long shot. And I'm like, this game is so over. Like it was so over.
Teams so rarely just flip the switch on offense like that, especially when you don't have a Charlie Slinger Walker or whatever out there, Which she wasn't even
math, right? Like
she wasn't even with.
You're down
the team,
20 in the fourth quarter, man.
Yeah, it's to come back to make
up
20 points in 10 minutes is like insane.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, I mean they made up 7 and 4, but And that
Yeah.
took a lot of effort. Like they were playing their asses
Yep.
off to cut it down to
Yeah.
13, and then all it takes is Cal hitting 1-3, and then it's like, well, it's over.
Yep, that's the end of that.
Um,
Yeah, I hope Cal's got Stanford now. I hope they go beat the shit out of them. I think that'd be awesome.
I hope
I
not,
don't
because then Cal definitely would jump us in any potential NCAA tournament.
I guess that's true. I guess
seeding.
that's true. So maybe not. Yeah,
Uh,
I don't know what to make of us. I mean, it really just depends on what the committee thinks about Charlize's absence and how much weight they want to give that Colorado game. Like, definitely the last impression being losing to Cal by 20 is bad. Like, really, really bad, right?
Yep.
But you've also got this win against Colorado, and Colorado, by the way,
At
beat
Colorado.
Oregon by like 50 today or something, right?
Yep. 49, I think.
50, yeah, something like that. So, like, you know, Colorado clearly really good. I mean, I think the best thing that could happen for us is if Colorado wins the conference tournament. I think that would be great.
Which they
You know,
definitely
you
could.
were the last, which it could, and you were then you'd be the last team to have beaten them, which would be, you know, kind of a big deal. So, I don't know, man.
Yeah,
I think they're right
depends
there
on how
on
much
the,
like
on the edge.
yeah, because they have. I mean, they're 25 in net. They're gonna drop, but they're still gonna be in the top 30 of net, and they have so many big wins
Yes.
on their resume.
And it
You know,
all
you
comes
haven't
down
won-
to what they
you know-
think about Charlize being in.
Yeah.
there. Like that's it. Like that's it. How much weight are they going to give to that? Are they going to give a ton of weight to it, or are they just going to give a little bit of weight with, you know, looking at the body of work? And to be honest, we don't know really with the women's committee. Like the
Yeah,
men's
it's
committee has a
hard, yeah.
long track record of, you know, doing things. The women's committee, obviously there's a track record there, but like the closer you and I have followed it, it seems like they are just
There aren't
a
as
lot
many
more
watchers.
inconsistent.
There
Yes.
there isn't the whole industry around bracketology
Right.
with the women's game. So there's not as many people like checking their work.
Yep.
I mean, there is
And
more. Like I've watched the last 4 years.
inconsistent and haphazard.
There-
So
There's more scrutiny on it than there has ever been, but
Yes.
it's still like this.
but
comes
still
from when
only a fraction of
men-
what the men's
the men's bracket has been intensely scrutinized for decades. You know, so now one thing that does help, it is a 68 team bracket this year versus so the NCAA has created equity in how many postseason teams they have for men's and women's. So on top of that, they've also added the Women's Basketball Invitational Tournament, which is basically a competitor with the Women's NIT, but it's run by the NCAA. So in my view, this is just my guess, is that it's going to be the second tournament. You know,
That seems
and the WNIT is going to be knocked down a peg. So I think at the very least, WSC is going to be like a 1 or 2 seed in that, and probably
Yes.
host a game at home if they are in that. So like their season's not over, I don't think. But
Yeah.
it's definitely, this is losing like that. Losing period to Cal wasn't good, but like losing like that to Cal,
yeah.
man, it feels like if their name is called on Selection Monday, it's Monday, by the way, it's the day after Selection Sunday, I will be shocked and happily
And
surprised.
ecstatic. Yeah.
Ecstatic, yeah.
I just hope nobody in the committee watched it. Because that
Yeah.
that was the most
That looked-
disappointing point
yeah.
to me. It was
Yeah.
not losing. It was not even losing by 20. It was that we just weren't tough at all. And that's been, you know, such a hallmark of Cammie's tenure, is that the team is just tough, really tough. They fight, they claw, they are both physically and mentally tough. I mean, how many times over the last however many years did they, you know, come back to win a game? Did they, you know, have a bad start and then they figure things out? Or how many times did they get behind and then, you know, they really knuckle down and, you know, hold a team scoreless for 6 minutes or whatever? Like, just
Yeah.
toughness has been such a hallmark, and they just were really soft today. And I usually am pretty hesitant to say that. And I don't want to, again, I don't want to chalk it up to effort for the most part. There were, we mentioned McIntosh. There were a couple times where McIntosh got off some threes that the effort in chasing her down at the 3-point line was like very bad, like alarmingly bad. But just in general for the rest of it, I don't think they weren't trying. I just think that there is a point where you have to punch back, not literally, but if Cal is going to be this physical, man, I know Cal's, big and strong and that's their deal, but man, you gotta fight. And they just didn't. And that is the concerning part to me is you really have to fight. And they just did not look willing to fight with Cal. And so hoping nobody watched it, I hope they didn't see that, because that sure looked like a team that was very okay with losing. And that was pretty alarming to me as I watched it.
And it was sucks. It's a long time until the selection day.
Yep.
It
Because
is
they played this tournament so early.
Okay, so they actually are doing it on Sunday this year.
Okay. Interesting.
So last year they had it on the Monday after the men's, but they have it,
which they've done for a while.
So it is on Selection Sunday. It's at 5 p.m.
Okay.
Weird. Okay, Selection Sunday. My bad.
Okay. Selection, but it's still a week from Sunday. You're
it's
talking
a long time.
9 days.
11 days.
8 days. 9, 10
11 days.
11
from now.
days. All right. My math is bad. Yeah. So
I mean, that
long
will be a
time to
beautiful
wait
day
to have to try and figure it out.
If the Wazoo women somehow get in, and so we have a day of watching the men get in, and if they got Spokane or something, we lose our minds, and then we're just okay, 5 p.m. comes around, let's watch a women's show. You never know what'll happen, and then they get in, and we'll just be oh my god, it would be the coolest day. It would. Okay, if they would have beat Cal today, I thought they were in. I think they would have been in.
I think
losing
so
to Stanford wouldn't hurt you at all. Beating Stanford obviously would have meant you were in. So I thought they were in. But no, there was at no point.
Nope.
I mean, maybe when it was at 9-9, it'll look like they might do it. After that, it didn't feel good.
No, they got outclassed, and that's not where you want to be against another team that is kind of in that bubble-ish conversation.
Yep. I mean, Cal was pretty far off the bubble, but they still were on Charlie Krebs. He was had him in the next 4 out. So they, it's still pretty far, but they're there. That means they could play in, especially if they beat Stanford. But just a bummer way for that rate, that part of the season to end. Hopefully they get to a fourth. Hopefully all those incredible win, that resume that they stocked up early in the year, and then add on that Colorado win at the end.
Yeah. Cammie's really pushing that, as she should.
Yeah, as she should. Gotta do that. And I feel like that stuff matters too. Jeff, so I guess that's it. That's all. We've already pumped the newsletter. If you want to follow me on Twitter, it's at the Craig Powers. Jeff is at Pod versus Everyone. And Jeff, with that I say we're playing UW. Hopefully a lot of y'all will be able to listen to it before we play them. Maybe you're driving over to Pullman. With that, I say go fucking Cougs.
Go fucking Cougs, Craig. Dubs down. Black Lives Matter.
Dubs down and Black Lives Matter.
And get vaccinated.
Join a union.
Find a union to support, man. Yeah. Even if you can't join, support a union. Go to Starbucks.